Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race C Race and Strategy Guide. We're off to Croatia in this one, and Dragon Trail Gardens in particular, and it is the Group 3 machinery. Now the settings for this one are actually very interesting and also kind of unique for a Daily Race C. We've got 13 laps to get round, tyre wear is at times 10, fuel is at times 5, we've got the medium and hard tyres are both available, both of which are mandatory. Your BOP is on, mid-speed BOP, damage is light, it's a rolling start and slipstream is real. Now what's kind of unique about this one, or very interesting about this one, is the fact that we have 2 mandatory tyres and also fuel as a factor. It's quite rare to get that in the Daily Race C. It does happen in GTWS, it did happen back in the FIA days as well, but for Daily Race C to have both tyre wear, tyre choice and selection and also fuel as a factor, it's not something that pops up too often, so very pleased to see that for this one, because it definitely opens up the strategy, definitely gives us a few more things to look at in this one, and can definitely kind of just give the race a little bit more of a kind of unknown factor. Now I'm going to do things a little bit differently for this strategy guide. I'm going to kind of look at each element of the strategy and then kind of bring it all together and give you how I think it's going to work out towards the end. But before we get to that, the test car for this one is going to be the Porsche 911 RSR. Trial Mountain from last week should have taught us that there is a few more Group 3 cars. There's certainly more diversity in Group 3 than maybe we give it credit for, but it's hard to see the Porsche not being a strong car here, given it's got a couple of big traction zones, given the Porsche is good in fuel, given it's good on tyre wear. But hopefully we should see other cars popping up and being competitive as well. Now as I said, I'm going to do things slightly different here. I'm just going to take each element of the strategy, the tyres, the fuel, and kind of give you my thoughts on them and then bring it all together towards the end. So the first thing we're looking at here is the medium tyres. Now on the first stint on the medium tyres, they are good for about 6 laps before you'd be better off on a fresh set of hard tyres. You can do the additional lap, you probably can get 7 out of them if you want to, but I don't think there's any real benefit to be gained from doing that 7th lap, because you would just be quicker making the pit stop and being on a fresh set of hard tyres. For the second stint on the medium tyres, with the fuel being burned off, the car being a lot lighter and with a little bit of care, 8 laps are actually possible if you want to go for a huge undercut. Now, you will be suffering towards the end. You can see here as we come maybe around about 2/3 of the way through lap 8 here on these medium tyres, we have very little of the white left on the telemetry in the bottom left hand corner, but they are holding on. We do get to the end of this lap without them going off the cliff completely, and as we know, you can actually run them on the red without a huge time loss like we used to. I would say 7 laps is definitely more recommended for the vast majority of drivers out there, but 8 laps are possible if you are looking to get the biggest possible undercut and you happen to be good on tyres. Moving over to the hard tyres, there's not a whole lot to sort of say about the hard tyres. They're going to do whatever you ask of them without any issues whatsoever. I think 7 laps is probably the max that most people are going to be doing on them if you start on the medium tyres. They do degrade slightly towards the end of the stint, maybe after about 6 laps, and when they're kind of the same kind of life as a medium tyre, they're around about 1 to 1.2 seconds slower, but obviously they degrade a little bit less, so as the stints move on, the kind of lap times between the medium and the hard will come closer together. What is going to be pivotal for this one though is going to be the pit loss and the fuel. Now the Porsche, if you drive it flat out, will be around about 1.5 to 2 laps short on the fuel. So what we're going to look at here is we're going to do a pit stop where we're going to take on that fuel that's required if we just drive flat out, don't do any fuel saving, and compare that to how much time we could save if we do the fuel saving over the course of the race. So coming into the pit lane here, do be careful of the white line in this one. It does come up quite suddenly on the left hand side of the track. You will have to have that decision made to pit before you come into the last corner, because you can't just cut across late like we used to be able to. So coming into the pits here, we're going to take on 22% of fuel, as that is what's required to get us to the end of the race. Obviously changing from the medium to the hard tyres as well. Stationary time there is 7 seconds. That was taking on 22% of fuel. Let's compare that to a pit stop where we're only going to take on the tyres because we've done the fuel saving, or we're going to do the fuel saving over the course of the race, and see how much time we can save if that is the option that we go for, certainly in the pit stop anyway. So 7 seconds is our stationary time for taking 22% of fuel on, and 3.8 seconds for only taking the tyres on. So that's a saving of 3.2 seconds. Overall, your pit loss is going to be about 14 seconds. If you do take on fuel, it's 1 second for the fuel animation and then about 1 second per 10% of fuel. Fuel is at 10 litres per second on the refuelling rig for this one. Now, whether option you're going to go for this is going to really depend on your ability and what you're like at fuel saving. If you're good at fuel saving, I would always recommend going down that route. If you're not very good at fuel saving, then take the hit on the pit stop. But that's pretty much all the elements looked at. Let's look at how that's going to come together and how I would kind of go about this one myself. So if you're towards the front of the grid, I think you're looking to start on the medium tyres. Use the potential of those medium tyres to maybe open up a gap. They're good for about 6 laps before you'd be better off on a fresh set of hard tyres. You can do a 7th lap if you really want to. I don't think there's any real benefit to that. So I would recommend 6 laps on the medium tyres, 7 laps on the hard tyres, and depending on how comfortable you are with fuel saving, do the fuel saving over the course of the race. If you're quite happy you're not going to lose too much lap time, it's not too hard to do this. Maybe you can shift around about 3/4 of the bar on the Porsche and you'll easily save that fuel. But if you're not confident with the fuel saving and you just want to go flat out, then it'll be around about 3 to 4 seconds you're going to lose taking the fuel on. Starting on the hard tyres, which I think will be the sort of optimal strategy for most places on the grid, not necessarily the optimal strategy in terms of pace, but if you're starting below P4, you're probably going to be better off starting on the hard tyres. You'll lose too much time trying to work your way through the traffic on the medium tyres. If you're starting on the hard tyres, you can pit as early as lap 5 and go for a huge undercut, although do be aware that you will be dying on tyres towards the end. You may well even run out of tyres, and yeah, you're going to be pretty slow towards the end as well. If you do stop as early as lap 5 or 6, it's quite likely that anybody finishing on the hard tyres is certainly going to be very close to your pace because your medium tyres will have degraded so much. Again, with the fuel, as I said earlier on in this segment, if you're comfortable fuel saving, do it on the track. If you're not, take the hit in the pit loss. Just want to give a very quick mention to this track. It has its detractors, I quite like it, but it is pretty deadly. This Porsche is not happy on a lot of the curbs. A lot of the curbs are very, very high here. And yeah, I didn't catch too much footage of it, but I must have spun about 7 or 8 times on the curbs here, so it's going to be very interesting. Certainly in the early days of this race, you're going to see a lot of people spinning off. Okay then, I think that's pretty much it for the strategy. Let's finish the video off with a very, very quick lap guide of Track and Trail Gardens in the Porsche 911 RSR. Coming up to turn 1, you're looking for the curb on the right hand side of the track. Now, as you come towards the end of that curb, just come off the throttle, you maybe have a little tiny dab of the brakes to bring the car into the curb on the inside. 100 metre board for the very tricky chicane. Now, you can kind of risk a lot on the curbs here. I tend to take it safe. I think you're probably better off getting the car around the track without spinning, rather than risking, you know, being 2 tenths of a second a lap faster by going over the sausage curbs there. Coming down towards the hairpin, now you do want to be looking for the 100 metre board, but you do want to brake before that, maybe about 110 metres. It's very easy to brake late into this corner. Expect to be dived into that corner quite a lot as well. It's quite a wide entry. The best way to take it is to take it wide, and a lot of people just see that as an invitation to shove it down the inside. Come through the S section in the middle, try to keep the car tighter into the curbs and don't quite use the full width of the track for the first 2 part of the S's, because it will give you a better line. Come down the hill to the quadruple right-hander. Keep it tight into the curb as much as you can, particularly between the 3rd and the 4th apexes. There's a nasty bump on the outside. If you catch that, it will throw the car to the left-hand side and it will compromise your exit as you come onto this fairly short straight down to the final corner. Braking just before the 100 metre board down into 2nd gear for this one. Don't run wide over the white line there or you'll get dirty tyres for the exit. Easy to understeer wide as well on that curb. The curbs are very, very rough at this track for some reason. Really feeling the force feedback as I was doing the test runs, and there's always that factor in there that the car's just going to lose it on those extremely bumpy curbs. But yeah, interesting race in prospect. Hopefully more than just the Porsche will be competitive as well. That will certainly add a little bit more spice to it, a little bit more variety. Yeah, good to see the fact that we've got the tyres and the fuel all playing a factor in the strategy in this one. It will be very interesting to see how it plays out. My kind of personal thoughts, it will be the hard medium strategy with fuel saving will be the optimal one that most people will go for. But yeah, do join me for some live streams of this one over the course of the week. Be great to see you in the chat. Hopefully the guide has been useful in some way, shape or form. If it has, please hit that like button. If it hasn't, please hit that dislike button. That's what it's there for. But thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.